What is up, YouTube? It is your boy Classic Tony at it again. No, this is Master Duel. I haven't played this on the channel ever. Oh, God. Try that again.
You stupid.
What is up, YouTube? It is your boy Classic Tony at it for the first time playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel. I have been playing a lot of this game. I think, a great way to get back into the card game. A little bit of context. I used to play Yu-Gi-Oh! Quite a bit. I was playing competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! For up until around 2004, and that was what would be the equivalent of, I believe, modern-day GOAT format. Back then, it's called GOAT now, but back then it was just whatever. Anyway, and I played up until around 2010, which would probably be called Edison by today's equivalent. So basically, I started playing Master Duel again to get back into modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Is a lot different from Edison and GOAT. And so those older formats that I remember have kind of fizzled. Like, they have their fan bases. They have a lot of people who have been playing them. But long story short, modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Is a very different game. And one of the things I ran into as a newer player was, how do you build your first deck, or what deck should you bring into solo mode? So that's what this video is going to be. It's kind of for my fellow returning Yu-Gi-Oh! Players, or maybe new to Yu-Gi-Oh! Players who want to access the game in a very fun and affordable way through Master Duel. So what I strongly encourage you do is maybe watch this and maybe some other tutorial videos, because I'm not going to talk so much about how to play the game as much as like a problem I experienced where I didn't know what deck to build. I didn't know what deck to build to play through solo mode. I didn't know what deck to build to get me started. And so I did a bit of research, and I kind of want to make this video as just sort of a helpful guide to anybody who have the same problem that I did. So first things first, what you're going to do is you're going to pick whatever one of the starter decks you want from the 3 that you get offered at the very beginning of the game. You're going to get offered 3 starter decks. And each of those, I mean, you can pick whichever one you want. They're all you're going to unlock all of them eventually. I would recommend, I believe it's the Synchro starter deck, because it gives you access to some really good cards early on, like Junk Warrior and Jet Synchron. So those are just some things to keep in mind. Is you will get all of those, but getting them earlier sometimes helps. But that's just an opinion. Anyway, what you're going to do is you're going to play through solo mode. So you're going to play through solo mode, all of solo mode. Now you can see some of the newer solo mode stuff has been added. You don't need to worry about that as much as the older solo mode stuff like this. So you're going to play through all of the solo mode stuff up until you get to right here with the Legend of the Star Heroes. This is where your deck is going to come from right here, is the Legend of the Star Heroes. So your solo mode deck is going to come from what is going to be a World Legacy deck. Now I know, like I said, experienced Yu-Gi-Oh! Players, please don't beat me up too much. This is a guide to help the newbies through solo mode. This deck works perfectly fine for getting you through solo mode. So once you've played through all of this, the World Legacy, where the World Legacy leads, so once you've played through all of that, this is where your deck is gonna look like. So I'm gonna show you real quick what that deck is gonna look like. All right, so here's the deck. Very simple, very straightforward. You're going to want to run your normal a lot of your normal monsters. You're going to want to run 2 of these of the Guardian Dragon Dog. I love him. He's so cute. And then you're going to want to run 1 each. You don't really need to. I typically just run these 3. You really don't need to run the World Arc, but you can if you want to. As well as you're going to run 3 of the World Chalice Fairy, and then you can just run 1 World Key. So these are your basic monsters. Now, you're probably looking at the spells and traps going, you don't get those spells and traps in solo mode. Well, the reason that I've included all of these spells and traps is because most of them, right, for example, you're going to need Foolish Burial. You're going to need Harpy's Feather Duster. So to me, it's worth it to craft those one-ofs early on, because they'll help this deck along with a lot of other decks. But like I said, you don't need this card to make this deck work. So you can start to see, like Unexpected, World Legacy Heart, all these other cards are just not, I can't dismantle them because you get them in solo mode. And again, the cards that are here, like for example, Lightning Storm, that is a card that you can get from the shop, and I encourage you to go and spend your gems on Lightning Storm. I think I have them all saved. Like, I think it's Lightning Storm, Ash Blossom, Effect Veiler. Like, you could spend 750, get some packs, and get a copy of those cards. I encourage you to do that. So that said, right, with that out of the way, the only other card in here that I wanted to talk about was Pierce the Darkness. Pierce the Darkness is from, I believe, the Dark Magician structure deck, and it just works really, really well in here because you're constantly summoning normal monsters. But again, you don't need it. You can take out 3 copies of Pierce the Darkness and replace it with another copy of the field spell, another copy of this, and another copy of this, you know, and it rounds it out all the same. I just find that once I bought the the Dark Magician structure deck, having 3 copies of this really did make it made for great draw power. So then you look to your extra deck, you can see, you know, we're running 3 of the Dragon, 3 of Priestess, and I believe Blade Master. Yep. So we run 3 of that, and then all the other cards in the extra deck, because, like, for example, you get Decode Talker from one of these starter decks. So pretty much all the other cards in here, you're going to look at these and say, I don't have those. Well, you'll probably have this one, but the others, you don't need all these cards to make this deck work in solo mode. I just put these in here to kind of give it a little extra, give it a place to go, give it some oomph. If I ever just don't want to go for this play or whatever, I can go for, if I want to step outside the World Chalice plays, I have other link options. I have ways to get rid of opponents' monsters with link monsters, things like that. So, and this is a really good card too. Again, you may not get this card, but it works really well with this deck because it works off the idea of, if you have normal monsters either on the field or in the graveyard, you can blow up your opponent's effects monsters. So it works really, really well with this deck. So you're just going to look out for maybe effects like that or things like that synergize really well with this deck. So this deck right here is good enough to get you through solo mode. So you can kind of look at this, and I encourage you to play with this and get comfortable with this, because as somebody who was new to modern Yu-Gi-Oh, I had never used link mechanics, and this taught me very simple link mechanics through solo mode, and this deck got me all the way through solo mode. Then once you've made it through solo mode, right? Like I have, like I've pretty much beaten all of solo mode except for a handful of things. Like, for example, I don't think I've officially cleared. Yeah, like I haven't cleared the Plunder Patrol stuff because I kind of want to build a Plunder Patrol deck. It seems like it'd be really fun. Not the most competitive, but very fun. And so anyway, what I was going to say is that once you take that next step, right? So once you've beaten solo mode, you understand the game a little bit better, well, then what do you do? So that's what I'm going to show you next. So next you have a few options. So you kind of get this bit of a branching path, right? So if after you've beaten solo mode, you feel like, you know what, I'm ready. I want to go into competitive mode, and I want to get after it, and I want to go on it. Then you're ready for a more experienced deck. Take those gems that you've earned from solo mode and that you've earned from just doing various things throughout the game. Take those gems, put them towards a deck that really interests you, and spend your gems on packs and on those decks that you really feel like, I want to build a, I don't know, right now Cyber Dragon. Cyber Dragon's really freaking cool, and Cyber Dragon makes for a really good OTK, so you could build a Cyber Dragon deck. That segues really nicely into my next point, which is the other option, which I consider to be a more intermediate option, would be to go for some of the structure decks. Now, I know, most of the experienced Yu-Gi-Oh players are going to tell you they're not competitively viable, they're not going to help you at all, don't waste your gems on them. And I understand. If your goal is to build a competitive deck, you don't really need the structure decks. They're not competitive, they're not going to be competitive. But if you want something to take into, say, casual mode, or to start, or just sort of dip your feet into the water of competitive mode, this is a deck that I have built with 3 copies of the Blue Eyes deck, 3 copies of the Dragon Maids deck, and I believe 1 or 2 copies of the... I'll throw it in now, I don't remember which one. I think it's the Galaxy Eyes or whatever, I forget which one it is. But what I'm saying, and I'm going to show you right now, is that this deck, while not competitively viable, it starts to sort of bridge that gap. So it starts to bridge the gap where you start to see you start to see you got Solemn Judgment, you've got a lot of hand trap, you've got your hand traps, you've got Ash Blossom, you've got Effect Veiler. You start dipping your toes into the water of hand traps and negates and board control, as well as doing some really cool stuff with fusion summonings. I also have Fallen of the Ablaze in here, but that's besides the point. You don't need this card. This is just in here because it makes for a good it's a really, really, really good card, and I want to eventually probably build a Fallen deck. Anyway, my point is that this deck is built with, except for 1, 2, 3 cards from all things you can pull from starter decks, which are just, good resources, because if you buy the Blue Eyes starter deck, you have a really good foundation to build competitive Blue Eyes decks. I mean, competitive Blue Eyes decks don't take much more. I mean, obviously they take a lot more, but only a hand, like I would say like maybe, besides the things that you're going to need, like for example, you're going to need 3 Ash Blossoms, you're going to need 3 Infinite Impermanences, you're going to need 3 of those cards, right? So you're going to eventually buy 3 of those cards. But as far as like building a competitive Blue Eyes deck, hey, you've got 3 Blue Eyes you don't have to spend your URs on. So it's just something to keep in mind, that's all. And as far as this deck is concerned, this will just help you get your feet wet, understand a little bit more of like recycling, like how to summon and recycle, and how to fusion summon a little bit more competitively, as well as synchro summon, XZ summon. You've got link summons. This cross sheep is just in here because cross sheep, I mean, I have pretty much everything except ritual monsters in here, so it's actually like, it's really good to, if I get cross sheep out and then fusion summon a card, I get to special summon a level 4. That's really good. So yeah, this is just, I wanted to show off this deck. Some of these cards, like for example, you don't need Goes in Match. Goes in Match is in here because when I get my end board, it's, Dragon Maid, Dark Maid, I'm such an idiot. It's Dragon Maid, Blue Eyes, Tyrant Dragon, and then they're all light monsters, so I can kind of use that to my advantage to shut out my opponent. But this card, if I see this card turn 1, it's kind of dead. So anyway, you can start to see where, we get into the little bit more competitive metas where you have like for example, Triple Tactics Talon and Imperm and things like that. So that's the next step. This would be your more intermediate deck built from a handful of cards that you pull, as well as those 750, one-ofs for like Ash Blossom and Imperm and Solemn and stuff like that, as well as some structure decks and other stuff. And then, yeah, so if you feel like this is more your speed and you'd like something that's a little bit more set up for you, then you go the structure deck route and you start building up that confidence and playing a few duels with this. And then once you're like, you know what, I feel confident, I'm going to build my very own Yu-Gi-Oh deck, well, then you build whatever you like. So right now, I'll just show you. I still need a handful of cards. You can see it's prohibited. I still need a handful of cards. But this right now is my favorite deck. So what it is it's a Snake Eyes and TG deck. So the reason that I play this deck is because Snake Eyes is just the best. It's tier 0. It's the best deck in the game. Like, we can have that discussion at another time, but this deck, Snake Eyes on its own is tier 0. But I love the TG monsters. I think that they're so cool. They have tons of different types and attributes to like play around with, so you're never like locked out by like Goes in Match or something like a Floodgate or something. They do so much synchro summoning that they just keep bouncing monsters all over the place. They play really well in the graveyard and stuff. And the thing that I love about this deck in particular is that this card right here is a play starter for both the Snake Eyes plays as well as my TG Synchro plays. So this card allows me to special summon 1 level 1 fire monster from my hand or deck, which means that if I need another piece of, like, for example, this card, right? Like, which just got hit to 1, which I'm fucking pissed about. But if I need Snake Eyes Ash, I can grab Ash. Or if I need whatever, right? But what it also allows is for me to get TG Rocket Salamander, which then I can make all the plays I want with Rocket Salamander. So, this deck has really helped me in competitive mode. I played it last season a lot. I haven't been playing a lot of competitive this season. I've just been very busy otherwise. So yeah, I strongly encourage you to just build your own deck. I built this because I love TG monsters. I think they are so much fun to play with, and then Snake Eyes just kind of caught my eye as like a really competitive kind of deck that like did really cool things and was really hard to counter because, you know, making monsters continuous spells or whatever is really broken. And yeah, so just find what you like, have a little bit of fun with it. Don't be too concerned about metas and competitive mindset early on, and then once you build up that confidence, then you can start building something that really speaks to your play style and the cards you like and that kind of thing. So I strongly encourage you to play this game. I strongly encourage you to mess around with solo mode and casual, and then get into competitive. Go for it. So thank you all so much for hanging out. I'm Classic Tony. I appreciate each and every one of you checking out this little sort of deck build beginner tutorial guide thing. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment. I'd be happy to answer any of those. I am obviously not the best Yu-Gi-Oh player. I'm not a competitive. I'm not anything special. I just want to help other new Yu-Gi-Oh players who had similar problems that I experienced, and you know, we can, you know, get more people interested in this game, because that's one thing that Yu-Gi-Oh needs, man, is more people playing this game, because it's a great game. It's a lot of fun. It's really, really, you know, the people who take it seriously take it really seriously, but it's also a really fun game to just play casually, to have fun with. Thank you all for watching. I appreciate each and every one of you. And as I say, take it easy and peace.